Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was other things like if there's information on the reason for like active such laws protect a municipality.
Good evening, everyone. So we'll begin tonight's meeting. This is a workshop. And we'll begin at 7:06. For the meeting to order. And let's pray. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so as promised, this meeting here is for the board to hear what the Human Relations Commission has put forward to their desire to include certain things that are currently looking to be left out. So I'm going to open the floor and let you come up and speak from here so that you get recorded. But Joe, you want to start?
Most of us are here, so I also want to defer to everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Julie Foster, I'm the Vice Chair of the Human Relations Commission. Louis Brad and Robin, also the HR Chair of the Human Relations Commission, and he's also serving on that group. So my understanding is there's two proposals for the ordinance. The township is proposing to repeal the enforcement provisions of the ordinance. So removing sections 6E through 6J. The Human Relations Commission has previously sent a memo expressing concern and opposition to that proposal. We've also been working for about 18 months now on a few smaller proposals to essentially clarify and address the procedural pieces of the ordinance, specifically to make the definition of discrimination match the provisions of the statement of purpose. There's a conflict in section 2A and section 1 to allow online complaints to be filed under section 682. This would allow complaints to be ADA accessible with our internet technology. And this is also something that the Phoenixville ordinance has allowed for. Our ordinance is basically a verbatim copy of the Phoenixville ordinance, but which is actually interesting. The definition difference is believed to be a Scrivener's error actually in our copy of the ordinance. Section 6A3 would allow for the secretary to receive a complaint in the manager's absence. Section 6A4 would provide for the Human Relations Commission to be consulted as the township come up with forms for complaints and answers. Section 6B would shorten the timeline to remit the complaint response to the respondent. So a complaint comes in right now, as the ordinance reads, we don't have to send it to the respondent for 30 days. The proposal is to shorten that to 7 days so that could hopefully achieve a faster resolution before folks get hardened. And also gives the respondent more opportunity to address and mitigate any potential damages they might have. One correction, section 6B has been stricken out regarding mediation. This draft that we have copies of isn't the final draft that we sent to the Board of Supervisors. This is a working draft, and the substitute language regarding fact-finding conference was more of a suggestion and idea that we could consider, but the commission is not proposing to strike the mediation provisions. We are proposing a seventh change to section 6G, G to add a requirement of if there is an investigation authorized by the Board of Supervisors, that the person who is appointed to conduct the investigation submit a report to the Human Relations Commission every 30 days. The intent of this is to create accountability for a prompt and appropriate investigation while also not imposing an artificial timeline. And then finally, 6L, add a provision to permit a complainant to withdraw a complaint prior to a hearing. This penalty is if the complainant is unable or decides not to attend the hearing, so to allow them to stop the process. Without a penalty, correct? Yes, that's the language. So I just rattled off a lot of them. We can go one by one.
We're here to listen, so you proceed as you would like.
I mean, that's the overview. These are relatively minor. We were able to consult with the solicitor to determine, well, are there certain things here that we can do procedurally? These were all items that were identified as things, because they're written in the ordinance, would have to be changed by amending the ordinance, as opposed to the commission as a group just saying, well, we'll give it to them in 7 days instead of 30.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. You want to come up and address?
Quick question.
State your name for the record, please.
Hans Buitenbeek, 96 St. Matthews Road. For the meeting, I go online and I get the proposed changes, but I cannot find the actual text that's currently being referenced in the comments. So do you have extra spare copies of the full ordinance that is being discussed? Otherwise, we don't have an opportunity to understand what's happening.
I don't have.
And it's not online. The only one that's available is the 15th amended version, not the full version that is amended again. And all comments that are currently being made untraceable in the absence of that. Thank you.
The current ordinance is on code 360. We did request that the proposed amendments be posted online, and we were told that we're not going to be posted online.
Why is that?
That's a good question. Mr. Granger told us they were not going to be posted.
Political transparency?
Mr. Granger, would you be able to tell us what's going on? Of the ones that are not posted.
This is for you to provide information to the board. That's what the meeting was. That was the purpose of the meeting. The board hasn't given direction to post anything. This is your comments to the board.
I mean, my view is I agree that it's a public conversation, so we should all know what it is that we're talking about, and it's just sort of strange to not tell people what's going on.
Well, I think for the sake of trying to be transparent, maybe you can address the issues, so, because we don't have an answer to it. So if you want to tell Hans what the answer is, that's up to you.
I mean, it's not online, and we asked for it to be online, and we were told no. That's the information that I have.
If I may,
Yeah, come on. Come on.
same name, same address. If that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You don't know what can change in the meantime. But as part of the materials online, there is the August 15th amended version, so partial information was provided. So it's a little bit strange that the full information could not be provided to be better prepared. Because some of the things going through may not require question or discussion, but at the right time, there are going to be a couple of questions that I'm not convinced right now that I will be able to ask them in full. And that's disappointing. So if there's any opportunity that these are public meetings, so all the materials that are being discussed should be publicly available.
I mean, I'm happy to share my copy.
Oh, I just got a copy.
Oh, good.
My speed reading is getting a little bit slower.
I would like to do that. We didn't call this meeting, so not earned so that I agree. The township meeting requested by the Human Relations Commission to present their concerns about the recommended changes to the ordinance.
the ordinance that was passed previously, that's what's online, or the ones, the proposed changes that we're doing on the last board supervision, what's on that?
We haven't voted on it, and
No, we were going to vote on it, but we decided to do it instead.
So the original ordinance that we voted on would be online.
Okay, that's the
As far as
existing,
I'm-
the existing ordinance.
yes, that's okay.
Were you saying the August 15th one was also, the revision to repeal sections of the ordinance is also online?
The one with section 6.6A through N is online, that it indicates to repeal. That's it. So rather than being able to see what that is, plus the other amendments that we're currently discussing, we don't have the full picture. And I'm speeding through it, but hopefully I can catch up.
I'm sorry, the technically the chair has to recognize, because I will refer.
Megan Emery, 1506 Sheer Mill Road. My question is, why is it being removed? Why is it being amended?
Well, we're just here on listening tonight, so we're not here to answer any questions. We want to gather information as to why these amendments that are being proposed should not be. So we're really just going to gather positions at this point. George,
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So the Human Relations Commission requested to get answers from the township. The township is proposing these ordinance amendments, not the ones that I referenced, but the repeal provisions to remove the ability for the Human Relations Commission to have an investigation, hold a hearing, issue any orders to have compliance with the law. So that means that the process, we've outlined a flow chart of how the process works under the current ordinance. That looks like this. Under the repeal, it looks like this. So what happens is someone files a complaint, they send it to the respondent, they have the opportunity to file an answer. If they don't file an answer, nothing happens. If they file an answer, they can come and get invited to mediation. If they don't show up to mediation, nothing happens. If they do show up to mediation and the parties don't agree to a voluntary decision, nothing happens. So under this appeal provision, the concern from the Human Relations Commission is that without the ability to have any sort of enforcement, we're not actually able to have our law go into effect. And I'm happy to pass around copies for the
so Joey,
supervisors.
these are things that we want you to address to the board, so that we understand fully your position.
We just
So-
sent the August 15th memo, which I can read, but that summarizes the position. At our last meeting, the Human Relations Commission, sent 4 questions that we requested the board of supervisors and the township prepare for this hearing, because the proposal to repeal the enforcement provision is coming from the township. And our main question to Emily is, why? The other important piece about all of this is that all of the procedures after mediation are optional. So these are referred to as special proceedings. They currently are not in place. They will only be enacted after the board of supervisors votes. So if it is a complaint that comes in, it's not resolved in mediation, the board of supervisors at that point in time must take a vote in order to allow for an investigation to proceed. And that vote also must be contingent on available funding to provide for the additional procedures. This is the same provision that they have in Phoenixville. I've had the opportunity to speak with, half a dozen different human relations commissions in our area. There's actually a tri-state human relations coalition of groups, like small towns like ours, who get together and talk about these issues. And I've learned, by and large, almost no one's actually had to do an investigation. They're able to get the parties to mediation because no one wants to go to a public hearing. No one wants to have to engage in that process. So that's sort of the opportunity then with mediation, which is free for them to come together and work it out. But without those provisions, we're concerned there's no if this is my client, I'm gonna advise you to not, because nothing bad happens. You only lose maybe if you go and so going back to the process statement, and I completed it, I don't want to waste people's time, is the August 15th memo, which was incorporated into the last Human Relations Commission meeting minutes, which is available online if anyone wants to read it for themselves. The 4 questions that were posed is first, how will the township enforce the ordinance if the proposed changes are enacted?
We're here, I agree with everyone that we're here to listen, to give you an opportunity to say everything you want to say and answer to that. But I do feel like it's fair to the public that's here to understand what's behind the fact that we're even changing it. I know, Sarah, you talked about it a lot, but everyone else doesn't know. Not everyone knows, most members of the Human Relations Commission have heard my opinion.
Okay, but the public's gonna go, well, what's the big secret? And it's not a secret, it's, John, I think, could explain this pretty well about why there's a concern about the extended procedures. And I think that's all that you want people to understand, right? Why do we have concern? And honestly, we came to the commission, yeah, we were a little uncertain, we have a big idea of it, but, yeah, that would be very helpful to understand what exactly is the reason is for changing.
We don't know, I wasn't here, we couldn't be here today. We don't. Wait, John, tell me.
My recommendation is based solely on risk. You are inviting 2 people on polar opposites to come an idea. Group of residents will listen to their comments and come to a meeting, which may or may not happen. Doesn't happen, there's an investigation by a third party that the township will pick wherever it happens. There'll be a decision. One of the 2 parties is going to like it. We live in a litigious society. The party who is offended by a decision is most likely going to take that to court, which the township has to defend the actions of the commission. If you don't believe me, read the paper, listen to the news that's going on. There's cases across the country of similar actions. There are other options, there are other venues outside of the township's Human Relations Commission where these matters can be adjudicated. I'm saying to the board, there are other venues, take a look at them, but be assured that if there is a hearing, there will be litigation afterwards, and you're going to pay for litigation, and you will ultimately pay for the decision that a third party of the court is going to rule. Those arguments are extremely expensive and time consuming. It will take anywhere from 1 to 7 years before decisions rendered. In my opinion, you are creating a situation that could be deferred or not enacted if there is not an investigation. It can be a mediation. Parties don't like it, they can go to court. The township is not involved in a court proceeding at county level. I'm all right with that because the township has invited a mediator will sit and talk as much as they want. Recommendation we made, one of the parties may like it, may not like it. If the party doesn't like it, they can go to county court. We're out of it. We have no expense. The legal system will adjudicate. The other option is the township has a hearing, engages an expensive lawyer at something I wish I could pay an hourly rate of, and have a hearing, court testimony, recordings, a record, and then that'll be, I'm sorry, that'll be appealed to another court. It'll go through the court system, to the county, to the state, and maybe the federal courts. Each time it involves an attorney, expert witnesses, time. I don't think that's the right approach. You have the ability to have mediation and relatively low expense. The parties don't like it, you can go to court. Can be court, and it can be adjudicated. It's a fair compromise. I don't think it's worth having the local people do an investigation when somebody else can do it. At their expense, not your expense. I don't live in a township, I don't have a dog in this fight. Everyone in this room does. Very careful about this decision, because it may not come to bite you next year, the year after, but it'll come to bite you. I'm about risk aversion, and I'm strongly recommended, this is a risk that you need to avert and concentrate on your core responsibilities. That's all I'm saying.
So does that mean our core responsibility is prohibiting discrimination in our township?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm saying, listen, something's gonna happen. There's two people gonna be affected by whatever happens. Let them come and mediate it. I don't care don't care what the parties are. There's two people. They're gonna be offended. You can bring them in and have a mediator. That's fine. I don't want this board to have to hire expert witnesses to hold a hearing and engage in that expensive outcome when there's other opportunities available to both parties.
Wait, first of all, in the ordinance doesn't say anything about expert witnesses or hiring lawyers.
Are you telling me, I'm not gonna get into, listen, I'm not an attorney, I'm not gonna argue with you. You asked my opinion, I gave it.
Thank you. I was first, it's incorrect to say the township would be on the hook for litigation because section 6M provides for in the interest of an appeal, the last line is quote, the township shall retain the right to intervene in any appeal. So we would not be a party to the appeal. It's the two parties who are involved in the complaint. The township may choose at its own election to intervene as a third party. So we would not actually be on the hook for anything.
Let me tell you about it.
No, this is the original ordinance.
Let me tell you about litigation in this town.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing to mention.
You have two parties. There's an accident on a state highway that occurs in West. We spent $3,000 to get the township thrown out of litigation because we were brought into it because an attorney on one side saw the township was there and it's a township issue. My police officer proposed. We were spending money to get us out of litigation that we had no right to be in because it wasn't our road and it wasn't our accident. You telling me that two parties aren't going to bring the township into litigation just because it says they won't? I don't think so.
My second question, this is actually the question from the commission that was provided to the township and the supervisors is, we can't find any cases where the township has been dragged into human relations litigation. And so our question to the township is, has this ever happened before the Pennsylvania agreement? Because in all the other human relations commissions I've spoken to, as well as, legal search, we can't find a time when the township, for just enforcing its ordinance as it's written, has been dragged into litigation.
I'm sure you search high and low and will not find it.
Okay.
Unless you want to say that it'll never happen and you want to give me a check, that's fine with your signature on it that I can fill out to reimburse the expenses to the township when it does happen. I'll be glad to do that.
The next piece is just to point out section 7A sort of requires that the person who is aggrieved has the right to pay reasonable attorney's fees. So basically, if someone is found to have engaged in discrimination, they have to pay all the fees and costs. They also have to pay the costs for the hearing. The same thing happens if a person files a complaint in bad faith and they know they were discriminated against and they filed it anyway. They have to pay all of the costs for any litigation or even for the hearing or transcribe those fees. I appreciate the potential future concern, but it just seems spurious to say, well, I mean, someone, as you said, someone can sue you for no reason at all. And to say we're going to have a law and not enforce it because we're afraid someone might sue us when no one's ever been sued about this before is contrary to the statement of purpose to the ordinance. These ordinances are actually meant to be, it's clear I found in talking with other human relations persons, they don't have to go to a hearing because they get resolved in mediation. When you have this, potential for a hearing that's in the ordinance, because without it, we can't do anything. That seems to be the choice that we're presented with. And to go back to the first question, how will the township enforce the ordinance? If the enforcement,
Do you have suggestions from the commission that we should hear? I'm here to answer the questions. We're here to listen. So if you guys have thoughts for us, we'd like to hear them.
well, one of the questions was having outside investigator who was insured and bonded perform the investigation.
Oh,
That's
we're referring not to a lawyer to know if we pay the bill, we're responsible for that outside resource.
No case has ever had, what's the cause of action?
It doesn't matter if you wear a seatbelt or you wait until you have an accident to start wearing a
Well,
seatbelt.
respectfully, there was science to show that people were seriously injured and died as a result of not wearing a seatbelt. There's no evidence here that there's a risk. I guess who suggested that this was a concern in the first place? This ordinance was passed 2 years ago. Wasn't a concern 2 years ago?
And so some of these things you're citing now were not concerned a year ago when we gave you 3 questions you wanted us to answer. And I got the answers to those questions. None of this was involved at that time.
Which of those questions?
You remember you wanted to know how we defined our area of
The
the
jurisdiction.
jurisdiction. You wanted to know how we defined the classes. And then there was something else that was words maybe in a paragraph.
Yeah, so that's the proposed changes from the commission to make it clear and consistent, so we don't get sued for someone saying, oh, well, discrimination here means this and there means that, so why did you discriminate? That's actually an attempt to have clarity to avoid
Right.
confusion.
So that's in the revision then.
It's in the proposed revision from the commission. Perfect. The last question that I have to speak, we have more information, but I'm pretty tired of the moment. It's been referenced that people can go elsewhere, and the whole purpose of this ordinance is there is nowhere else to go. We don't want to duplicate the work of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission or the EEOC. There's places for people to file those complaints. The purpose of this is to cover discrimination that's not protected. If you work for a small employer under federal law, you have to have at least 15 employees to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, religion, sex, really anything. You have 0 protections under federal law. And if you have an employer that has 2 or 5 employees, you have 0 protections under state law. So this ordinance fills in the gaps. That's why so many townships, over 200 townships in Pennsylvania, have enacted these ordinances, because there's a need for them, especially in a small township like ours. We have a lot of small employers. The way Phoenixville does it and what the commission has proposed is they provide references to people who might have a complaint under state or federal law. Here's how you file your complaint with those commissioners, whereas we might not have jurisdiction over that. And that was another intent to clarify our jurisdiction, so we don't take those cases that can be served by other entities.
And that was exactly the boundaries of this ordinance, was things that were not covered by federal or state.
Yeah, not as it's currently written, but that's the proposal to change it to fix that, to match the Phoenixville ordinance.
Right.
So again, our question is, where do folks who have been discriminated against go?
As it is now, it comes to the commission.
If they can't go get any mediation, that would be tough luck, go to court.
I have more arrangement to review.
Will there be mediation training provided to the members of the commission?
If
I
the
think
board
it's a good
has
idea.
done it. I've heard you here for, you can't wait to learn how to do investigations. I don't remember you asking to say you wanted to know how to do mediation.
That's something that was learned, so how the other human relations commissions do this process is they do have trained mediators on the members of the commission, and then they also have usually attorneys who are already knowledgeable and trained in performing investigations, to be able to correctly and appropriately conduct that process.
Thank you. George?
Yeah, George Wilson, 1415 Hill Road. First, I think John's discussion was my original question, how did we get here? I think I know now. The other one is, I agree with Hans, the red line that you guys all had would have been nice for us to get online.
Here's where you have new part of this. This is going to be talked about 4 or 5 more times. And as the discussion solidifies around issues, there will be a lot more correspondence.
No, I know, but just for the purpose of discussion tonight, you guys all have a red line copy, you could have just posted it. We're doing that, I've said it before, I appreciate that you do that before the other board meetings, I think this was just a mess. I guess in reference to what John had discussed, is there like what kind of numbers are we talking if it did go to a lawsuit? Is this, are we talking hundreds of thousands?
We just looked at it, we're not going to do it.
No, I mean,
Well, there's 2
if
costs.
something went to
There's 2 costs. There's the cost of paying attorneys and expert witnesses and all the stuff that you do. That could run, there's 6 figures in that. And the second cost is the you know,
okay, but you're at the limit.
you're at the limit of a bunch of people in a black room saying that's the way it is, you know, and nobody knows.
And none of this would be insured or anything. So it is a real risk, potentially, if it ever happens.
It's a risk, and you know, it's all you have to do is just read the newspaper or watch TV. You know, there's a case going on in Colorado, and one in Ohio, with a college. Nobody thought they were discrimination, and then we get to the Supreme Court, and it would cost children in college $35 million.
Was the township involved? Was any government
It's
involved?
a college. It doesn't matter.
But
Who thinks that someone that people would talk about? We're talking about 2 public agencies here. Doesn't matter if it's a government, college, or whatever. It's a risk.
It does matter because there's a difference between the adjudicating body. The Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission doesn't get sued when someone gets an adverse decision. They appeal, and the 2 parties are involved in the litigation. The government is the court at the first instance. It's the trial court.
Probably absolutely right. But the state of Pennsylvania has exempted itself from like 8,000 litigations. It has never exempted any municipality for any form of litigation at all.
Okay, let me call this meeting to order. We're here to hear comment. We're not here to answer questions. So, Julie, when you're at the podium, you can make
I
comments.
apologize.
Please don't do answers. It's just going to drag this meeting on. We're not going to have a good, coherent meeting, so please. George.
I think just as I said, just to repeat what I said, it would be good to have the information that we can make better comments and ask here, avoid questions.
Okay, thank you. Comments.
Hopefully, I would like to maybe 16 minutes as well. Since we often can make comments, where do we, this happens to be, but where do we may have the questions and where do we have the questions? I have a number of questions as to why is this needed. Part of it during answers, but I'm still baffled at the fact that where there's a case of discrimination that cannot be handled outside the township, there are a number of other avenues. So we'd like to get that clear. So it's not a question to you, it's more around trying to figure it out. So consider it a comment generally. It states in 6.6 that appeal is possible, so I'm not sure the interpretation that it might not be sued because any order can be appealed. So let's test some clarity on that. I'm reading it differently than how you explained it. And the other part is that the terms that are being used here are intended to be aligned with other townships around it, etc. It raises a fundamental question to me. There is this defined set of definitions, singular, of what discrimination is. Why do we have the need to align? Why do we not reference at the state or the federal level what those definitions are so we do not get additional gaps in what is considered here or there? The way that this is happening by not referencing existing law that regard makes it just much more likely that you're going to have variances. In that regard, I do agree with John. The risk is going to be high for something that need not happen. So the entire purpose to me is missing why these changes need to be made, why they need to be at the township level, and why there need to be differences in terminology, even if you're trying to align. If you look at the red line book, the definitions I understand the fundamental conceptual why you want to address something like this, no disagreement there. But why this format, why the township needs to be in the middle as opposed to other venues that are already in place? That would be very helpful to be clear to understand exactly the concern that I would share with John on what are we in for that we need to go into. This can get very expensive.
I would prepare to provide the date point that the resolution for non-discrimination was passed in early 2020. The commission is not established for the following year.
Fair point. I'm having a very fundamental question as to why is it here that cannot be really dealt with elsewhere already because of other opportunities that you have to bring it up. So my question to you is that where do I bring those comments? Is there an upcoming committee meeting? Otherwise, what's the format to do it? Is comments only, not questions?
You don't have the answer to that.
Okay. Do you have the answer to that resolution? Okay, so it's going to be a discussion in the air.
Their meetings are the fourth Monday of the month, 7 o'clock. Right?
Okay. That's good. That's good. If that's correct.
May I, or should I go to the podium?
Go to the podium,
Okay,
please.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll write it down, yeah.
So, Jennifer Munson, 1974 Beaver Village. If some of you have followed the timeline, in 2019, I was running for school board. In 2020, I was on the school board, and we have all our meetings on the same nights as the board of supervisors meetings. So I've not been able to attend and hear all the discussion in 2020 and 2021. But what I do remember from 2019 was that there were some specific cases that are not covered by state or federal law, and that is what this is intended to cover. And I just have one case from my history that I thought would actually fall into that category. When my now spouse and I were in our 20s, we had just met. We weren't entirely sure how long the relationship was going to last. We were both low on money, so we decided to go in with a third person to rent a house. So 3 unmarried participants. We were denied one of the houses. We fell in love with this adorable little farmhouse, and we were denied that rental because we were 3 unmarried young people, 2 women and 1 man. And it sounded to me like this ordinance would address that sort of situation and allow those young people to have a place to go. Okay. So, let's just take that as a context. So we understand that residency is a very difficult, expensive place to live. So if our young people want to find housing, that is a scenario that could happen. And then, furthermore, being on the school board, having, seen a lot of litigation from the inside where, you do get to see how expensive it is. I completely understand the concerns over that cost. However, I do think it is very important to distinguish what is the role of the township and what exactly could the township do to avoid being the one we sue, because in most cases it should be the 2 parties who originally, like the complainant and what's the other term? Complainant? Those 2 parties should be suing each other. It should not land on us. And we should have insurance to cover it. If it landed on us somehow. That just seems to me like, at least at the school board level, we always have insurance that will cover certain circumstances. So I think that's definitely worth looking into. And also, I think the role of the administration in a government organization is really to advise the board to, see that the things that they have voted on are carried out. And so to introduce an additional layer of intense emotion coming from the administration is, I think, a little bit inappropriate in this situation. And I would hope that we can all, stick to facts and clarity and trying to work through things rather than arguing. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Robin Austin. I live at 2735 Constable Road. I'm very grateful to the commissioners. I was appointed to the committee back in June. I served 2 months. It's a great honor. My spouse and I moved here without knowledge that there was such an ordinance. And we're very happy that there is. So in the spirit of very helpful. I hear a lot of talk about cost. We're talking about the lives of gay, lesbian, bi, and queer people and trans people. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about their rights. I am a gay man, I'm 66. I've sat in a lot of rooms like this for a lot of years. I've heard exactly that argument about the cost of litigation. And it troubles me. I get it, we're in a time of litigation. I get it, and a lot of laws are being challenged. I get it. But what's really important to know, and I'm not sure I'm answering the gentleman's question or not, there is no law in Pennsylvania that protects LGBT people. There's no law. There's no law on the federal level. There's nothing. We are the only state in the Northeast that does not have protections. Now, Julie talked about the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act of 1955 allows municipalities to enact this type of legislation to protect their residents. We are only one of approximately 70 municipalities in our state. There are 2,000, I'm getting the number for you, 2,562 municipalities. So really what I want to say is I commend the courage and vision of this community to enact this legislation. Maybe we don't have it perfect about how to enforce it, but we have to have some means by which to enforce it. It's just hollow, it's meaningless. And I could go on and on, but I won't. Just to say that, you know, I'm happy to live here. I love this community. I've been here for years. I love the open spirit of the community. But we have to figure this out because there's nowhere else. You know, many of you may know that the House of Representatives passed the Equality Act, but it didn't get past the Senate. So, and this is every year for years and years. So, but I'm just saying, imagine if we had a discussion that we were talking about a biracial couple, but we don't want to because we can't afford the legal costs. Or we don't want to defend free women who are renting a house for $100,000. It's the same argument. I'll end with that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Barry.
Well, I wasn't gonna get up, but I feel discriminated against by Rob. Because I was told when this was going in, this would protect heterosexuals too. Not that I'm just a heterosexual, but I am wearing a female's jacket tonight, so that would make me a cross-dresser. But I'll say it again, like I did 2 years ago. I think that the board is a waste of time, but it's already here, unfortunately, because there are really no instances in this township, and this is not 1955. And I have to rent a lot of places. I manage 50 units, and I really don't care if you live with a giraffe. But if you do live with a giraffe and somebody doesn't want you there, why would you want to live there? There's lots of other places to go to. So what this is a whole lot of work by a lot of good-hearted people here that mean well, and I think we're all great people here. It's a great community. I've been here all my life. But I see a lot of effort for really such an infinitesimal fraction of an incident even happening. I believe we had one incident in here, am I right with this? There's been one complaint? Not even one complaint. Okay, because I heard that there was one, but then it got withdrawn. So 2 years, I asked the board 2 years ago when this was going on, and they said there's never been an issue. I could see it if there was problems, but we put in these ordinances and cost the taxpayers a lot of money for something that is not a real problem. Okay? God bless all you guys. I love you all, but you know, at what point, what burden do you put on the taxpayers for this? Seriously, you know, if somebody doesn't want me, I'm not going to that place. I'm not going to that cupcake factory. I'm not moving into your house. Okay? We're all big boys and girls here, and the world's not the same place as it was in 1955. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, stand by, Julie, if you want to get up.
Thank you. I just wanted to answer the questions that were posed. To begin, were the questions about the gaps in state and federal law, or just like the reason why the ordinance is needed? Was that made clear by the other folks as well?
A little bit more.
Okay, so basically, it's that there is no other law that says you can't discriminate, even on the basis of race, against someone if they have fewer than 5 employees. There's no law that says you can't discriminate against someone because they're unmarried, because they have children outside of the housing context. So, for example, you can fire somebody because they have a child or refuse to hire them for that reason. That's not against the law anywhere in Pennsylvania unless we have this ordinance that defines it as discrimination. And so that's to your second question, why we don't reference the definitions in the state and federal law. It's because the state and federal law don't cover what we call protected classes. And that's, race, disability, veteran status, gender. We're proposing to add, or the ordinance currently adds sexual orientation and gender identity. We're proposing to clarify it also applies to marital status and family status. Family status is referred to having children. Those are protected in municipalities in our area as well as Philadelphia has this since the 1980s. The third question, why the township needs to be involved. It's the township's role is sort of the first form. It's kind of like small claims court. So if you are a tenant, you don't usually go to, landlord won't fix your roof that's leaking. You don't usually go to the court of common pleas because that costs a lot of money. It's really complicated. You have to figure out what a precipice is. And instead, they have forms for anything less than $12,000. You go to the magistrate or district court, we call it small claims court sometimes. That's sort of the role of it. That actually is exactly the same role that the township would be playing in this situation where someone comes in and files a complaint. We do some extra steps before hauling the defendant into a public hearing. So small claims court, you file a complaint, 2 weeks later, you get a hearing, you get to settle here. The way this ordinance works is first we say, hey, parties, let's provide a neutral person who's knowledgeable to see if you can work it out via a mediation process. And then if that doesn't work, the current ordinance says the board of supervisors can then vote to authorize an investigation to just see if there's any there. Before making someone come in to a public hearing, is there what we call probable cause? Is there any reason to think that discrimination occurred here, or we fired because we're late all the time? Then, again, assuming that the board of supervisors has voted to approve the special procedures, each probable cause is found goes to a hearing. And at that point, there's a determination. That's just like the hearing at the small claims court. Instead of the one judge ruling, it's the commissioners who make that decision. After that decision, either party may, but is not required to, file an appeal to the court of common pleas. Same way it works in small claims court. So at no point in time is the judge at the court of common, at the district court, the small claims court, they're not a party to the case. They're on appeal. That judge isn't sued unless they do something, that's sort of the question here is why do we think that we would be sued when no township has ever been sued for that before? We're not a party when it gets appealed. We're the first, the determiner in the first instance. That said, that provision is the township could have sued if we want to intervene, if we think it's a really important case. But the big picture, and going to George's question about damages, really what this ordinance allows is for the township to order someone to stop discriminating. There's usually very little to no money involved in these cases. You as the claimant, again, the claimant's the one who files the complaint saying I'm discriminated against. If you want money, you have to prove how much you were owed, what were your lost wages. If they kick you out of the restaurant, you're probably not owed money damages in that case. They would just go to the restaurant and say, please stop kicking people out because they're a member of this protected class. remedy is what we call, emergent relief. It doesn't involve monetary damages. And that's why this ordinance is so important, because if you don't, most people who are victims of discrimination do not have a lot of money. They don't have money to hire lawyers to go to the court upon the pleas. That's why they need public human relations commissions to be able to have any protection at all under the law, because they're not able to avail themselves of attorneys. I've done employment discrimination, and you really can't get a private attorney unless you make six figures, because no one's gonna take a case. It costs so much for the lawyer to litigate it.
When you talk about telling somebody to stop this discriminatory behavior, would that be a member of your commission going to talk to that person?
No, that would be the order in the hearing. So there isn't a procedure where the commission goes to a respondent.
So then it would just, they just get it in writing. Would you have gotten some idea of that prior to you doing the initial interviews and attempting to mediate these conciliatory behaviors?
Oh, that's a good question. So there is no interview process until after the special procedures are voted on by the supervisor.
Wait a minute. So you have a chance to do reconciliation, but you don't talk to people about what the problem is.
That's how the procedures are written. And actually, that's a good point. So there's a difference between mediation and reconciliation. Mediation happens before the hearing.
I thought mediation could lead to reconciliation without a hearing.
The way that the ordinance is written, I can kind of walk you through. It's also on our little flow chart.
Well,
So, and they're just different words. They kind of mean the same thing. Reconciliation is where the township is then, not a party so much, but, plays more of a role. So the mediation is just the township's the neutral arbiter. You have the two parties. That's in section C. So that's before you get to the special procedures. You don't get to conciliation until after the expanded procedures. And that is after there's been a finding of cause. Then this is section I on page 10, expanded procedures. The commission determines that there's probable cause for the complaint. The commission shall endeavor to eliminate unlawful practice. But that's only in the proposal that's going to, this isn't a provision that's proposed to be repealed. So that's not on the table, and there's no ability to have to issue an order, because you need to have a hearing before you can issue an order. You have to have due process, right? You have to have everyone have their fair share of their opportunity to speak. But that's a good point to clarify. So there's no role for the commission of the township until after the expanded procedures are voted on. Does that answer the question? Is there another part there? Okay, so in the example of the, three unmarried roommates who want to have an apartment, they come to the township, they say, we were told no because we're not related. In that case, you'd invite them to mediation. And again, if the landlord doesn't show up, or the landlord says, well, I don't want to have, they're messier than family, or whatever their reason is, they don't want to have them in there. Then the township where, I think I'm uncomfortable with it, and the township has no recourse. And the person who's been, in that instance, the damages would be, change your policy, change your practices to allow an unmarried couple to rent. That would be the remedy. There wouldn't be money damages in that kind of case.
Like now you're still living out on the street, right?
Well, and that's why we're proposing to clarify the definition section, because right now the definition only protects LGBTQ folks. And so that's why we're trying to make it match section 1, the purpose, so that it covers all of those other classes that it was intended to cover. Any other questions that I didn't respond to? Okay, and then I have a question, or rather a suggestion, if there's an opportunity to, as I'm just very confused about this idea that the township could be sued because we're adjudicating a case between two parties. It would be very helpful to hear from the solicitor more on this. And that's why we money and then sue the township. There's no cause of action for that. That has to be some legal basis. So I'm curious what that would be and also what the damages claim could possibly be, since there's never been this kind of lawsuit. That said, we're here to brainstorm ideas if it could address this concern to limit remedies in the ordinance to just injunctive relief as opposed to money damages, if that would address the potential concerns over exposure. And then finally, it would be very helpful for the solicitor to review, as Ms. Munson suggested, our policy. My understanding is that insurance should cover all lawful actions by the township. So maybe our deductible would be at risk. But in terms of actual payout, it would be surprising that we wouldn't be covered by that. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Hi there, Julia Brindell, 2472 Collins Green Road. I have a couple of comments I've said also. Quick question for you. We are talking about employment, correct?
And housing.
And housing, because housing is covered under all of the different fair housing acts that are federal. So when you were talking about three unrelated people living together, you most likely, just FYI, we're not being discriminated against based on that. There are many townships that it's written in the township code that you can have no more than two unrelated people living in the same household. Goes way, way, way back to brothels. And maybe township code needs to be changed, but I highly doubt, because I'm in real estate and I have to tell people all the time. In this township, we can't have more than two unrelated people. We could have two families with 10 people in each family as long as the house is big enough living together, but we can't have people from three different families. And that's township code. That's not actual discrimination. Maybe it's discrimination going way, way back into the code. But just so you understand, that's where that comes from. So that's what needs to be changed there. So it's not necessarily that you're being discriminated against. I know, for instance, my son, 6 kids, all want to live together in a house in New Jersey because they're going to school. They were told, we will not rent to boys. We will only rent to girls. What does that mean? Right. No, actually, girls are not safer than the boys are, to be honest with you. But that's, this is just, that's one of those things. But there's a lot of code that has to do with that sort of thing. But I just wanted to clarify whether it was employment and fair housing that you're talking about. And also, I can imagine the only way that the township would be party to a lawsuit is if it's actually a township employee that is doing the discriminating. That's where you're going to have a problem. So if that is the case, does taking this out of the ordinance, does that mean that the township can't be sued if it's happening underneath the roof here in the building?
Let me be clear here. The Human Relations Commission is an arm of the township. They're holding a hearing. Somebody's going to hire experts to testify at the hearing. All of those actions put the township at risk. For 7 or 8 years, I served on the executive committee of the Delaware Valley Insurance Trust. It was the township's insurance company. We reviewed every lawsuit filed against over 50 members of the trust. I'm going to tell you how many times these things happen. I'd have to check the definition of family, and maybe wrong on that, because generally speaking, family definition has been litigated through the federal court system. Pretty much says family can be defined in a way, but it can't be defined when you're discriminating against people. I think anyway, I'd have to look at the definition of family in the township code. There are, if you turn the TV on tonight, you will see 2 ads, maybe 3, of lawyers saying, I'll represent you in a personal injury suit, and you don't have to pay me until I get you money. There are advocates for every minority in the country, 501c3 organizations, NGOs, looking for a test case on any matter. They will gladly spend any amount of money on theirs to represent an indigent person who they feel was discriminated against. They will lobby and state in a court of law that the township discriminated against that person for whatever reason. It's the way the legal system is structured in this country. I'm telling you, there is a huge amount of risk here. In fact, if the township hired the attorney to do the case, you're in it. The insurance company's not going to pay for it because you had an attorney, hired that attorney. The only way they do it is if your township, if they filed a lawsuit, the insurance company would have to retain the defense counsel for the township. You're out. You have no say in whatever conclusion happens because the insurance company's paying for the defense counsel. You know, there are other options. If you wanted to have a say in the outcome, you have to pay for your defense counsel. The insurance company will not pay for the township selecting its own defense counsel. That won't go. I've tried that a number of times. It won't happen. So you're stuck at risk. You're waiting for the insurance company will eventually say there's some point in time where they're on the hook for not only defense costs and insurance payments, but this little phrase called punitive damages, which can be levied at any time by anybody. Assuming any court cases coming up where punitive damages often exceed the cost in future. There is a cost here, a financial cost. If somebody is discriminated against in hiring, let's say there's a guy's got 3 employees and one is habitually late, he's Spanish speaking, and he's married to another ethnic minority, and the guy fires him because he doesn't show up. It's a discrimination. The employer doesn't have an employee manual. He's only got 3 people. So what does he use to base his decision on? It's because he doesn't show up to work. Well, it's documented. Those questions are going to come up in a hearing. And if they're not, it's, this guy goes back to work. He's not going to go back to work. The employer's not going to want him, right? He doesn't show up to work. What's the damages? The court's going to rule this guy's got to pay this employee some amount of money. It's the way the court system is structured. There's never a case where everybody pats everybody on the back and it's simple. Go back to work and everybody's happy. Pay them back the $10 you owe. That doesn't happen. Those 2 people are agreed and they will never see eye to eye on anything. The guy's not going back to work and the employer's not going to accept him. There's lost damages. So the guy's lost future wages. That's going to be factored into the decision. And it may be that one or the other hired a really stupid lawyer, and that was compensatory damage. The risk is there. It will always be there. It will never go away. I support a lot of what people said tonight. You have the ability to adjudicate through mediation, and if it doesn't work, step back and let somebody else deal with the issue who has better training, knowledge, deeper pocketbook. Let them solve the problem. You have done what you can. You brought 2 people grieved by a situation in the community and attempted to resolve it the best you can. If you can't do that, let somebody take it to court and let the court system work. You're out of it. You address the problem of providing the residents with an opportunity to be heard where there is not one now. The issue is how far beyond that point do you want to go? I'm saying reduce your risk to 0. Let the court system solve. You're giving both parties the opportunity to defend themselves in front of a third party. And if neither one is happy, let them go to court. You've done the best you can do because now you have 2 people who are fighting. And if you've ever been in litigation, 2 parties fighting, no winner except for lawyers.
Okay, just really quickly, time.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I mean,
So we can get this draft online in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I'll get
We
to
can
it by the
actually
end of
take
the
time to read it. There is a meeting the fourth Monday of this month where there can be an open discussion at the Human Relations Committee that everyone can come to and ask questions. And Mr. Granger, would you be able to prepare something which yourself or the supervisors explain, other than, you know, just what we have in the video in a minute, your position on this?
yeah.
And why you feel that way?
Sure, it won't happen this week, I'll tell you that.
Well, prior
That's a long,
to the meeting,
yes.
when we all get a chance to sit down and discuss it.
I can do that.
I said I'm kind of clear. I did want to answer your question quickly about the Fair Housing Act. So federal, I believe, only applies to rental units with 4 or more properties. So again, it's still in the gap for smaller units. State law does not cover the LGBTQ status, and nor does federal law. Again, we're covered in those gaps. The other question is, so the township would be liable for general employment discrimination under Title III of the ADA, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. I'm not sure why we'd be more concerned about saying we'll also don't discriminate against LGBTQ folks. If there's a particular reason, we should be more concerned about adding a protected class. My first job in law school was working at the Philadelphia Human Relations Commission, and I'll end with a story about that. But I've done the investigations. I've litigated these as a plaintiff's attorney. I've litigated these as a defendant's attorney. The Human Relations Commission is never involved. They're never a party. It's like saying that the judge is a court of common case, considering where you said the parties can take it to court. Well, does the judge at the court have concern about being sued because of the adverse decision? The 2 parties are the people involved, not the township. The township's never a party to one of these cases. So I'm just very puzzled. And I think to answer questions, we again would really like a solicitor or someone knowledgeable about this in our office to come and talk to us and answer our questions with the Human Relations Commission. We haven't had the opportunity to ask them questions.
Not recently, is what you mean.
He hasn't come to any of the commission meetings.
To Zoom into a number of them.
No. So that would be really great. Because, you know, we don't want to spend money on frivolous things, but it's just very unclear how the township could be involved. The reason I got into this, I personally got into this kind of because there are no lawyers for poor people. Even with fee shifting provisions, lawyers don't take these cases because they cost the same amount of money to litigate a case for an executive as they do for a dishwasher. I represent a lot of people who make $20,000 a year or less. There's just no damages there. You wouldn't cover your litigation costs of a lawyer floating that. So it's not like a tort case where you have a personal injury claim where you just take a third off the top. That's not how it works in civil rights litigation. Often there's little to no money involved, and that's why you can't get a lawyer. There also aren't nonprofits. I started a project in Philadelphia to represent people with disabilities in employment discrimination cases. There is no legal service for this. They don't do discrimination cases at legal aid establishments in PA. There's too much other urgent need to take on this kind of litigation. So without the township standing up for folks, it doesn't work. And then finally, I would say I do think conversations and mediation works. When I was at the Philadelphia, I was at the Philadelphia Commission, and a lot of cases, probably one of the best ones was a major national retailer. And there were 2 folks who were in a ladies' dressing room, and they had beers. And people were complaining, and the staff freaked out, and they called the cops. And a Philadelphia police officer knew the law and said, no, we have, trans rights in Philadelphia, and people can use the dressing room that they identify with. And later on, when this came to the commission, the national retailer was like, you know what? There's these statutes coming up all over the country. Will you help us write a policy that's compliant so we don't have this kind of problem again? And that, that's the outcome that I think we can achieve here. But again, if I'm a lawyer for the retailer and no negative consequence is going to happen to me, why even bother talking to the commission? I can just keep going on my merry way. And that's why it's so important to have some ability for the commission to issue orders to be able to compel compliance. I mean, why have a law at all? Why have a speed limit if no one ever gets a ticket? You don't sue the police officer, you don't sue the township when you get a speeding ticket. It's an adjudication whether or not you were speeding, not whether or not the township's allowed to have a speed limit.
Wendy Fountaindike, 906 St. Matthew's Road. I just have a short comment. I think we need to stop adding more laws. We need to learn how to get along without the threat of destroying small businesses. This is meant to cause problems and put so much power in a small group's hands that it will make good relationships with people impossible. Trust will be impossible. We need to work on getting along with each other, earning trust from each other, not adding laws, government, and division.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Megan Henry, 1506 Sheer Mill Road. I worked in human resources for 4 years, and one of our missions was not to have any kind of discrimination or lawsuits against us. And during the last 20 years of my employment, being in charge of human resources, we didn't have any things that went to the EEOC in the business that I represented. And a part of the reason we didn't was because we had such clear steps people could take in the event of being discriminated against. And we were able to resolve it between people. They weren't angry. They were looking to have a voice to say what their problem was. And if we were able to resolve it internally, that was our goal. So if we say we are these things, if we say we are a community that accepts all diversity to live here, then we should have some things around that that support it. So I think it's overstating that there's going to be a flood of discrimination cases coming in just because this exists. This just gives you a method in which to manage it when it does. It doesn't mean you're going to get $1 million lawsuit that you're going to have to pay for. So I think you really need to be looking at it, creating a community. You have these statements about non-discrimination, and it's really important that you have a basis in which to support that in your community. And thank you. I think that's what we intended with the original ordinance, and we found out that was flawed, and then a misunderstanding, and we were trying to improve it. I'd like to have you come help the commission.
Anyone else? Okay.
I just asked.
Yeah.
Robert Austin, 2735 Conservative. So you just said a flaw and misunderstanding. Could you just articulate that again so I'm clear on that?
Well,
I'm not sure what you
I
meant.
think you know to get from this mark,
Okay.
and I'll do that.
All right, thank you. I just want to be clear about it.
I'll say
What
it.
it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just one last thing I just want to add, to Mr. Granger's comment about nonprofits that have this legal support. I've been very involved with over the years, the ACLU, with the Land for Legal Fund. These are nonprofits that do raise money to help people go to court, but believe me, they don't have a lot of funds, and it's only the really strongest cities that get support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to public comment on anything else that's not on the agenda. George?
Yes, maybe make it a comment. I hope our recording capabilities are better than they were in the last meeting.
It's gonna take us a little bit of time.
One microphone.
eligible.
I had one board member, there was a problem, it's gonna take some time.
Barry?
John, did you find out where the negative interest, how the negative interest in our treasurer's report?
No, my intent is to do that treasurer's report at the regular board.
Do what?
I will make a report at the regular board meeting as part of the treasurer's report.
Okay, because you said you had it next meeting and then you weren't in, and you said that the next meeting you weren't able to
I
do it.
said it will be part of the treasurer's report, but that's just a treasurer's report question. And that's what I'll make the report.
Okay, point of order, this is not a question period, this is a comment period.
It's not a business meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my point is, I still don't know why there's negative interest. Thank you.
Hans?
On 5/9/06, St. Matthew's Road. Sorry?
Only one time in a minute.
I didn't know about that. Thank you. I'm happy to do it. Just a comment. I was driving, we were driving on St. Matthew's Road recently. And as we were driving in the direction of Kimberton, on the right-hand side, there was a sign for only part, the township part. And we're quite disappointed with the way that looks. It is not a very tranquil country look. It was more like we were entering an industrial or shopping area than a big blazing sign. So just want to raise concern, disappointment that if that's supposed to be a permanent sign, that it really doesn't fit the West Vincent Park idea of nice, tranquil, green, everything just yells at you. So that's a comment.
Thank you. Julie?
Hi, sorry, Julia Brendel, 2472 Florence Green Road. Part of what George was just saying about, making sure that the video and the audio is, we can hear it. I just want to play something if it'll play, because I actually put my little recorder right next to me in a meeting not long ago, and I was able to record the whole entire meeting, or an hour of the meeting, which you can hear everything, with my phone sitting on the chair right next to me. So there's no reason why we can't have audio.
Time is the only reason, it's coming.
Right. Well,
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so I have one further comment here. Because we're entering the holiday season, we're working on a budget, and there's other issues coming up. We're going to have one of the board members out for about a month. We're not going to be able to fully discuss this amongst ourselves and work with this until after the first of the year. So please be patient with us, and we'll come back and talk about it again. Okay? All right, with that, I'll move last adjourn.
I can make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all for coming.